Anytime you want to get us started, Andy.
It says off air for me.
We're live, baby.
I'm seeing off air.
You are live.
We are live. That much I know. This is what happens when we don't do a podcast for 2 weeks.
Why is it saying off air? Welcome to the Gooners podcast. If I have to record this twice, I'm going to punch Mike in the penis. How is everything?
Oh, doing all right, man. I think it's just broken because we're not together anymore. The last time we did a podcast, we were in each other's sweet embrace, and maybe the thing is just broken now.
We were. I don't know about you, Mike, but I got a lot of requests. What are you guys podcasting? The fans have asked, and we're answering because that's what we do.
Yes,
they're begging for our content.
We were just talking about this on Tom. Welcome, Tom.
Oh, thank you, mate. Pleasure as always.
I was just doing a spot on Tom's podcast, the Gooner Talk TV, and he was mentioning the same thing. He's got 8,000 people begging for.
I didn't mention it. You mentioned it. Don't bring these things up.
Well, but I do get it. You know, the fans have called and they said Andy needs to get back. He needs to get healthy. He needs to stop gallivanting all over the place. Do a podcast. So yeah, I miss Denver. I miss your mom. How's she been?
Yeah, well, you know, as you can probably tell in here, we're a house of sick people, so I don't think you're going to miss us that much. Excellent.
So what's up with you?
Not much. Just living life, you know, balling, shot calling. I know you're over in England. You've attended the last 3 matches, Mike. Let's jump right in because I want to ask. And Tom, I mean, you've been with Mike for a number of these.
Too long.
Tell me a little bit about the atmosphere amongst supporters under Unai. Mike, you were there last season. You got to see a pretty kind of tepid time at the club. But what's the atmosphere like now compared to last season?
It's a world of difference. I mean, to me, as a temporary observer who gets to kind of see snippets every once in a while, but not every single week, it's a sea change from what I saw in March. You know, in March, it was not yet known that he was leaving, Arsene Wenger. We were kind of puttering through another season where it looked like we were going to regress, and in fact, we did. And there was a lot of angst, a lot of frustration, a lot of kind of combat between fan base, you know, between our own fan base, a lot of infighting. And, you know, while there still is some of that, it's just a happier feel for me right now. I mean, the away support at both Lisbon and against Leicester was phenomenal. Everyone was in good voice, even after the somewhat disappointing result of yesterday. So, I mean, it's been a big difference, and it's a welcome difference because it seems like everybody's kind of willing to give this some time and cheer for the boys.
Absolutely. And yesterday was disappointing, and it felt, and we'll get to it, it felt more like a loss than a draw because we were on that streak. And for a while, it kind of, I think, probably an hour, 2 hours after the match, and then you're kind of thinking, well, actually, we're still unbeaten in this little run that we're on, and you knew it was going to happen at some point. But let's go back to Leicester because we haven't talked since then. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but we secured a 3-1 victory. I really want to talk more about Ozil and the masterclass. I mean, I think for 90% of the season this year, he has been very good. Tom, do you think putting the captain armband on that man makes him go to that next level? And should he continue to do so?
I think with Ozil, it's a case of it only really works when he wants it to work. And your question about giving him the armband, is that going to give him some different dimension? Is it going to provide him with this new motivation? I think there's always going to be that link. I mean, he says that he signed the contract with Arsenal because he went with his heart over his head. which is a concerning statement in itself because it makes me think that he signed because of his love for the club, but actually, in fact, his head was still telling him to leave. But I mean, in terms of this season, into answering your question, I think that giving him the armband is always going to be that slightly extra bit of motivation. But at the same time, he's already for this whole season been told that he is definitely going to be one of Unai Emery's 5 captains within the team. Whether he's holding that armband or not, I think that's a motivation in itself. But I think he's now realised that this is it in terms of his footballing career. He's made the decision to stay at Arsenal for the prime years of his career and into the twilight years, into his early 30s as well. And he needs to really be knuckling down and getting on with it. And he's definitely in that Leicester game. He showed everyone what he's really capable of.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Mike, I'm going to steal a Tom Canton saying here, and let's go to the third goal. Woof. I mean, Ozil's audacious flick in midfield set motion to one of the best moves of the season. And then he follows it up with probably the most simplistic, slightest touch on the outside of his foot. And I'm almost certain if you gave that same scenario to 10 professional footballers, 9 would not be able to lay it on for Aubameyang to slide it into the back of the net. I mean, when the guy is on, he is just next level.
No, 9 out of 10, if not more, would have had really one play there, and that is to shoot and possibly had the angle cut down. But no,
I don't even see the pass.
Yeah, and credit to Aubameyang for running with the play. But I mean, that entire, it was killing me knowing during that Fulham game and that Ramsey goal that it was the game before the one I was coming over for, because I would have loved to have seen something like that in person. And there we were comparing it to the Norwich goal, and the Crystal Palace goal with the scorpion kick. And there were 2 weeks later is probably a better goal than the one at Fulham even. Equally as good as kind of the back heel finish and the kind of behind the back pass from Bellerin to keep the Fulham goal going was the amazing running off the ball. Ozil with the dummy of the season, as far as I'm concerned, and not just leaving it there, continuing on so that he could get into that pass from, I think it was from Lacazette. I mean, that was just it didn't hit me how good that goal was until I went back and watched it afterwards. But that was a treat. No,
it absolutely was. I mean, and what like everyone kind of talks about the three moments of Ozil brilliance. For me, the Lacazette moment of he's gonna dummy this, that is just training ground, just knowing that player you're with. I mean, because most players would stop their run or they wouldn't be ready for it, and it was just sublime. And we got the 3 points. Let's move on to Sporting, Mike. You were away. I assume the support was great. How was your European vacation?
The parts that I remember of it were fantastic. It was a tale of 3 nights. I will say, first of all, Lisbon, if you haven't been, you need to go.
That's amazing.
Whether you're there like Tom scouting, Bruno Fernandes, or whether you're just visiting the city in the summertime, it is an amazing city. Now, for a large man with a bad back, the hills in Lisbon.
Oh, it's a killer, isn't it?
Oh, it was not a good. That was not a good time. I will say a number of Ubers were employed, and the Ubers were cheap AF too. But
yeah, they're very cheap out there.
It's an amazing, amazing city. Obviously, this not being a travel show, we'll talk about the stadium and the game. But the away support, again, in Lisbon, it's a different animal than the away support we had yesterday. It's a very, very positive vibe. It's the enjoyment of it away from the stadium is the part that I like probably better than at the stadium. It's more about the day and the night before than it is about those 2 hours of the game. And this being the 3rd time I've traveled for a Euro away day, I'd say the enjoyment of the time around the game was the highest on this one of all 3, because everyone's just in a good mood and there's a lot of revelry going on. And I got a certain I bought a couple drinks for a certain media content producer who's been blaming me all week for it. But sorry, Robbie, for that. But
So it was a tough match to watch. I don't know what the vibe was like in the stadium. Sporting had some decent chances. There was just a stalemate. I thought that they were organized, and eventually patience, paid off. And future Ballon d'Or winner Welly, as I like to say, that Tom hates, bags a second half winner to give us the 1-0 win and help us retain top spot. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's wrapped up. We're in through the knockout stages at this point. Even though statistically we could fail, we're not going to.
Not in this group, no. Not with home game against Azerbaijani
Karabakh.
But I mean, it was. Again, of the time I was in Lisbon, the 2 hours of the game were probably the least exciting moments of the entire trip, but that's often the case. It was a classic Euro away day win, though. We made Lisbon look completely toothless. They had a couple opportunities, but nothing that was really too threatening. We didn't look particularly well put together, but it was, one moment of brilliance from Aubameyang and a great finish from Welbeck, and job done.
And to be fair to them, their keeper had some decent saves as well. It could have been way more comfortable. Tom, that's a pretty different Sporting team than what we've been used to in previous years. Have they done well to replenish that side, or are they really hurting after kind of the mass exodus of some of their bigger players?
Obviously, they're still going to be hurting. For those who don't know, last summer there was a group of fans that after the failure of the season, they went into the training ground and actually attacked some of the players. I think Bas Dost, in particular, the Dutch striker, was left with scars on his head from the attack, and that obviously meant that several players, including the likes of Gelson Martins and obviously the guy who's always linked with Arsenal every summer, William Carvalho, he left for Real Betis. Gelson Martins went off to Atletico Madrid, but they lost plenty of others. They thought they were going to lose Bruno Fernandes, obviously the highly rated Portuguese midfielder who went to Portugal with the World Cup this summer, but he managed to stay. Rui Patricio went off to Wolves, as many people know, and they're still in contract talks with him, trying to sort of feed, like basically saying that you've got a really good goalkeeper and we lost him for free and we're not exactly the most blessed in terms of financial backing. Can we come to some sort of agreement? And the agreement's probably going to be in the region of about £15 million, which is quite generous considering the fact he did leave on effectively a free from Sporting due to the termination of his contract. But they're still a good side. They kept Bas Dost, even though he was the one who was left with personal scars. Bruno Fernandes, as I mentioned, is still there. 10 of the 11 players that we played against in Portugal are all international players. And you saw the likes of Acuna, the Argentinian left-sided player who's the left-back at them, but also plays more usually as a left winger, was very tricky down that left-hand side and provided us a few problems. And even though the one guy wasn't an international, as you mentioned there, the goalkeeper Ribeiro, he had a fantastic game in goal and kept us out many, many times. So they're always going to be tough. And I wish, obviously, Glenn Hoddle the best of luck in terms of his recovery. But what he said before the game in his pre-match analysis was saying that they're an easy side and we should be turning them over. Yes, we're better than them, but I think it was understated how good they actually are. Yeah,
absolutely. And they're a side that do well in most competitions, so they don't go into matches probably with that underdog phrase. They go in thinking that they can nick the points. And so do we know if there's been any retrospective action with their center back that headbutted Liechtensteiner yet?
Nothing's
happened. I'm assuming UEFA have to do something to retro that, but who knows?
No, nothing's been done as far as I've seen.
Yeah, and I got to go back and watch that because I keep hearing about how vicious that was. And
I mean, it was, he gets off the ground and it's not a natural. He just kind of rams his head into Liechtensteiner, and it is what it is. But speaking of ramming, let's go to Palace. So the end of our winning streak, but we remain unbeaten since our loss to Chelsea. Mike, you said a few months ago that this was our flat track, and we should really be maximizing points from this entire run. Granted, we fell a little bit short, but were you really expecting this to happen? Were you really expecting maximum points?
Well, no, and I don't know that I said we should be getting every single point.
Well, no, you had said it in the fact of like Arsenal versus these teams should be maximizing. We're better than all, which is true.
Yeah, and I said, we have an opportunity to go into Liverpool, not 0 points after 2 games, but with 21 to 24 points after 10 games. And I didn't expect us to take all of the points. So, to have 0 losses in that time frame, and obviously we finished the flat track of the league anyway that we talked about, has been brilliant. We're winning while learning. The fact that we'll talk about the details and the ins and outs of why we didn't win yesterday, but the fact that we didn't, I mean, whether you put that at the end of the 12-game streak or whether you put that right smack dab in the middle of the 12-game streak where no one's talking about, a winning streak, but just an undefeated streak, doesn't really matter to me. They've been playing good enough to win and better than anyone could have expected.
Tom, do you feel like, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, and I certainly don't want
put me on the spot, mate. I love it.
I don't want this to be an Arsene versus Unai thing, but I personally don't see with Arsene
every week that we're not going to do that.
Well, I don't personally think with Arsene as manager we would have won all these matches. We would have dropped points throughout. What do you think is the biggest difference from last year to this season? Or do you think, hey, Arsene could have given us maximum points there?
No, I don't. I don't think he would have. If you'd have said, I'm going to offer you 22 out of 24 points in the league over the course of those 8 games, including the Palace game, I would have bitten your arm off for 22 out of 24, especially considering the amount of away games that also encompassed. And against sides like West Ham have beaten Manchester United and drawn with Chelsea this season, Everton, who we come unstuck against, and Watford, who we seem to find a banana skin as well. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of the difference from last season, I've just mentioned there that we only won 1 game away from home all season under Arsene Wenger in 2018 last season. So that's already an improvement. Do I think that we would have won the same amount of games? It's unlikely we would have. And the main difference I see from what you've asked me there, I think, is the actual players' belief and drive and motivation to finish the game strongly. The second half performances we used to see at Arsenal, ironically, quite similar to what we saw against Palace yesterday, is that we would capitulate towards the last 20 minutes or so. But actually, it turned out that we've turned it on in the second half. We've found the win, and not just found the win, but we've secured it, like the 3-1 win against Leicester, for instance, getting that goal in quick succession. I mean, we still saw it against Palace. Obviously, we got 2 goals in very, very quick succession. And when we score, usually we then push on and try and get the next one. That seems to be Unai's style. Whereas Wenger, used to see him, if we were 1 goal up, take off someone, bring on Coquelin, take off someone, bring on El Neni. We're not seeing that of Unai Emery. We're seeing Ozil come off and Welbeck coming on and someone trying to kill that game off. And it didn't work yesterday, but it's worked very well in the games up to that 8th game in a row.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that confidence, I mean, you just see players like Bellerin, who has been not the most flashy right back, but he's been solid defensively. He's been great. And last season everyone was kind of booting him out of the club. And now I think this season everyone's kind of like, well, hold on a second. And Mike, I'm going to go to you on this. Is he back to being the Bellerin that you once listed for $70 million? Oh. Because there were 2 Bellerins last year. He looked shitty for 90% of the season. This season he's been very solid. He's making good runs. I feel like he in the system can flourish, but he's not this flashy player anymore. He's just doing what he needs to do.
Yeah, I'm never going to live that comment down. I don't think
that's not a bad comment, because we know on the day he can be a £70 million right back.
Well, at the time, which was a month into the 2016-2017 season, I was living off of his play against Chelsea in the game that we won 3-0, and him chasing down whoever it was, Costa or Hazard or whoever it was, from about 70 yards away, and just thinking, there's no one else in the world as a right back that can do this. Then he went and hurt himself against Spurs, and he was never the same again. So, look, maybe I had a reason to say it at the time. I don't think he'll ever be that again, but he certainly has regained his position as one of the best 20 right backs in the Premier League. So he deserves to be starting. Probably one of the top 6, if we want to talk about that. So, unfortunately, he seems to have picked up a knock, and we may be without him on Saturday, which is going to put our defense at even more 6s and 7s against Liverpool. But, Bellerin, has been a sign of improvement. There have been a couple other players who have shown some signs of improvement. One who's still kind of up for debate is Mustafi, and I guess that leads us into the first goal. Tom, you and I were talking about this on the on your podcast about an hour ago. The diving in, Mustafi again, just making a rash challenge at a time where, I don't know if there's any team that's given up more goals in the last 2 minutes of the first half than Arsenal have this season. But Andy, I mean, what was it, a penalty, and how could that have been avoided?
I think it is a penalty, and it could have been avoided by him just standing his ground. When you coach young defenders in the six specifically, you stand on your feet, you wrap your arms behind you, and you just make yourself as big as possible, but you make yourself small enough in the game where you're not, wailing your arms around it. It's hard to explain, but it's easy to coach. And that was just an absolute reckless move from him. And I was going to ask, so I'll go to Tom on this. Do you reckon it's time we see Holding and Socrates when Socrates is fully healthy? I mean, Holding for me has been outstanding. We see Mustafi time and time again as a great player, but he's also a liability. And if everyone's healthy, do you feel like we need to give Socrates and Holding that pairing, or do you stick with Mustafi based off of the sometimes just rash challenges?
I think that what we've seen over the last 8 games is actually a Mustafi who has improved. I think he's actually shown some good performances in that run of 10 wins. And when we look at 11 wins. What we could have had, we've won so many games. It's so weird to try and remember.
I know, it's getting boring, isn't it?
It's so like when you look at Mustafi, when he has a good performance, the annoying thing and the thing you see is that we see a good performance from Mustafi is a performance in which he didn't mess up in one calamitous way. That's a good performance from Mustafi. So maybe our view of his games are slightly skewed because we've been experiencing so many poor decision-making options from him. But I think that he has actually improved over the last 8 oh my Lord. Over the last 11 wins that we had. And Unai Emery is probably a huge factor in that because we know he's much more defensively minded than what Wenger was. And so his coaching in that area would have been better. Hopefully he might have even utilised that certain Steve Bulb we've got more efficiently. Who knows? But I think in terms of your question to asking me about Socrates and Holding, that's probably the 2 going forwards I'd pick. I'm interested to see what happens when Koscielny is back fit and if he does actually come into the manager's plans straight away, or if he phases him gradually, or if he actually even realises or recognises him as a person who can be starting games for the Arsenal still in towards the twilight end of his career. And I think this is probably going to be his last season for Koscielny before he moves back to France. But I think when push comes to shove, Socrates and Holding is probably our best pairing.
Absolutely. Mike, what are your thoughts on it? Because I forgot, Koscielny is back in training, isn't he? I don't think he's ready for first team, but he's getting there.
He's back in training. But I personally, I've got to see him in, the next round of the Carabao Cup if we should make it there. Certainly the European games we have coming up, which are very, very low pressure games, would be a good opportunity to see him inserted back into the squad. I'd be very nervous in his first game back in the Premier League, whoever that opponent is, and it won't be Liverpool. And after Liverpool and between Liverpool and the United Tottenham back-to-back, we have a relatively flat track again. So, I don't know that I want to see him there. Socrates and Holding is taking that spot, and he's not giving it up.
And I forget which pundit. I want to say it was Dixon over here in the U.S. had said something along the lines of
on a last name basis with Lee.
Yeah, under Arsene, a player of Holding was just told, go out there, play good football, play positive football, and try and pass out of the back. And that was pretty much it. That was the coaching they got. Now they're told, when this player makes this run, you have to be here. When this player on our team has the ball, I need you here. When your partner is off over here, I need you to call your left or right back that you're with and have them come with. Scream at Torreira to get back with you. There's just way more, I think, coaching that's happening for these guys. And so we're seeing the best players. And you remember the cup final against Chelsea. Why was Holding so good? because Kerr was screaming at him for 90 minutes, just directing him where to go. And when you're a young player, you need that, you know? And you see, like, you hear about Mourinho, who was constantly screaming at Luke Shaw I think last year or 2 years ago. Some young players, they need that. They need that guidance. And so it'll be interesting, and it's a good headache to have.
Screaming is stop eating.
Yeah.
That you don't need. I hear that all the time. But I would like to see those two, Mustafi and Socrates, which everyone I think at the beginning of the season kind of assumed our main partnership would be, can take a back seat as long as Holding's playing as strongly as he is. The fullbacks are where I'm a little bit more worried.
Absolutely. So if we look at the second goal, or excuse me, the Arsenal goal, I don't know how much you guys talked about it. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'm going to go to this question. I'll go to you first, Mike. Do you think VAR would have ruled the Arsenal goal back after replay? Because I'm not sure that Lacazette did that much, because I think it took a deflection after his hand.
You're talking about the second goal. We're going to skip right over the Xhaka free kick.
Well, I want to get to Xhaka separately, so let's go to that goal, and then we're going to go to Xhaka, because 66.6% of this podcast would probably go to bed with Xhaka if he was at our house. So, so let's go to the second goal quickly.
Our communal house.
Yeah,
where we
it's just me, Tom, and Xhaka living under one roof. Do you think VAR would have called back that goal?
A shitload of lube. Would VAR have called back the goal? Interestingly, because without goal line technology, I'm not sure that the goal would have been given in the first place.
Absolutely, yeah.
Have you been able to determine, because Tom and I were talking about this, whether it was Lacazette's hand or whether it was Holding's head that hit the ball?
No, and I'll be honest with you,
the hand was up in the air, which leads you to, and I'm for anyone listening to this on iTunes, you're missing out, because on YouTube right now, I'm lifting my hand in the air.
Yeah.
Demonstrate how Lacazette's hand was lifted in the air. I just want to point that out. And
for the two listeners on YouTube, thank you, moms.
Thank you, Carrie, for coming in, and Jonas and a few others. But back to the question. I mean, VAR could have probably determined whether it hit his hand or Holding's head, and if it hit his hand, wouldn't that then lead you to believe that that the goal would have been ruled out? I mean, it seems to me, as it is, it counted, and we took maybe an undeserved lead by that point. But I'd like to try to get into some super slow-mo and see whether maybe Holding's head, because I've heard more than one person say that it was Holding's head and not Lacazette's hand, and that's what I would choose to believe.
Well, and I think there's an argument that if VAR rules that goal out, it could potentially rule out the Zaha penalty as well, because that was just atrocious. Now, Tom, let's go to our main man, Xhaka, and I want to kind of talk on 2 points here. The goal, absolutely sublime. You had tweeted out, I believe, from your TGT account a couple days ago. I don't know if maybe you have a Man United fan that tweet for you. I'm not sure. Something about how when Xhaka is playing in the left back position, we lose something going forward because he's just not naturally gifted to make those runs down the side. I was thinking on the other side of that was like we lose something going forward because he's not in that middle, kind of driving us that way. You got to give the guy credit. Unai's gone to him and said, "Hey, I need you to play left back," and he says, "I'll do it." I mean, that's the sign of a true leader. Talk about the goal and talk about him as a left back, because I hope we don't go to Liverpool with him as a left back, because if we do, we fucked.
Yeah, I'll start with the goal. The goal was obviously amazing. I'll let Mike tell his story from before that, but I know exactly what it is. It's amazing. But the goal was fantastic. We were talking about it on the show just before we came live. It's not even a free kick. When you hit a free kick from the right-hand side of the goal to the left-hand side of the goal, you expect it to have curve. And I'm talking like a lot of what we like to call swaz, a lot of swaz on it. And it didn't. It was like a tracer. It was so dead, like an arrow into that top left. There was a slight amount of curve, granted, but it wasn't the swinging effort that you expect from that type of free kick. It was so powerful. Like Hennessy got a hand to it, but it was never ever going to have any effect. It just obliterated his wrists. I'm surprised he was able to stand up with it afterwards, but it was a fantastic free kick. But I mean, talking about him at left back, yes, you highlighted the tweet that I mentioned. Playing with Xhaka at left back, whilst it's great, he's taken on board his responsibility that he's the left-footed guy, and we don't have many left-footers at the club bar Ozil, and I mean, he's not going to play there, is he? So having Xhaka play there is a necessity right now, and hopefully Monreal and Kolasinac will be back, because as you said there, if Salah comes up against a left-back Xhaka, he's going to get absolutely destroyed. And don't get me wrong, I know we're both lovers of Xhaka, but we're willing to turn around and say when we know that he is faultless, he isn't faultless, and he is going to be tortured by playing in that role against someone like Salah, or if they swap Mane onto that side, or even if Shaqiri was to come on and play that, he'd still be very effective in the same way that Zaha, and we'll come on to the equaliser, but they make him make mistakes in that situation. They make him dive in. They make him commit to things that he wouldn't usually do. And I like the fact that you brought up what we're missing from him in midfield, because what you saw with Guendouzi and Torreira is two very inexperienced passers in that midfield. Both of their game is based on keeping the ball and reclaiming and recycling. And I thought they had a decent game together. But when you got Xhaka in that midfield, he provides you with that consistency and that accuracy of pass. And people get so annoyed with him giving the ball away, but that's because he's trying to play passes into risky positions to start up attacks and get people in behind. And if you don't have a player that's willing to risk a bad pass here or there in the offensive move to try and get someone in on goal and create a chance, then you're really lacking in that. And we really did lack in that yesterday afternoon.
No, absolutely. Let's go to Mike. You have a story, I think, that includes Gixer with the goal.
Yes, everyone knows. Well, not everyone, but I kind of fancy myself an officiant of a big ongoing argument between the two of you and Sir Andy of Gixer on Granit Xhaka. He is a hater. Haters going to hate, as we all know.
I wish I could pull up my WhatsApp message yesterday. I think I called him a hater, a baldy, gingerbeard cunt.
Side clown, I think, is one of the popular nicknames. But so, and by the way, thank you, Andy, for getting me the tickets yesterday. But the he's a jerk when it comes to Xhaka. Look, I mean, he's not right. You guys are right. But so anyway, I wore my Xhaka jersey yesterday specifically to take the piss out of him, because I knew that Xhaka would be the man of the match. I mean, there was just no question for me. So right in front of the goal that we're sitting by, he sets up for this free kick, leans over to me, and says, "If he scores this, I will suck you off." and I'm like,
I can vouch for this.
I'm like, yeah. Tom's on the other side of me, and he instantly put a blindfold on. But I'm like, no. That isn't like a win for me. I'd like him
I have heard he's got the mouth of a Dyson, so
Jesus Christ. Of a Hoover, I think, would be the more appropriate. But so then, I have not collected. He did celebrate. I will say he was had no problem celebrating the goal, and then and then somehow my pants became unbuckled, and it was a shit show from there. But.
So
wrong choice of words.
I mean, it's an absolute banger, and he went from hero to zero, because I was about to text to Gixer in our group. Must have been really awkward when every Arsenal fan is celebrating the Xhaka goal and you're standing there, because he just purely hates the man. For no other reason than I think it's because he's from Albania, but we'll get to that later.
In our next podcast called Eastern European Countries and Bald Men. Yeah.
But Mike, I got to see the penalty. I know Xhaka came out after and said, "Hey, our knees touched," and he went down. For me, I don't think it's a penalty, and this is why. As a defender, you're going after the ball, not necessarily the man. Xhaka's movement and tone was to go after that ball. He at one point decided, I need to make myself as small as possible, and that's when Zaha decided, I want to make the Olympic diving team. I need to do something special here. And he gets the penalty. But how can a defender defend if they're not allowed to actually defend? Like, it doesn't make sense to me how that's a penalty.
Well, let me ask you, because you are
Mustafi, penalty. Xhaka, not a penalty.
I first of all, I agree with you. Second of all, you have your coaching A license or whatever it's called, your Premier League license of coaching young girls.
Yep.
He can tell young footballers what to do, is what it is.
Well,
no, Tom, I can yell at them what to do.
By the way, 2 weeks ago when I went to visit, we visit our friend Justin, who also was on our last pod with us.
Who, by the way, I would like to say took over the girls I coached, and just yesterday wrapped up an undefeated season.
What is that?
Champions. Well, it tells him I've left him a really good team.
He's that's what Arsene Wenger's claiming right now about Unai Emery. So, and so we're watching this game from the corner of the field, and Andy's just clearly on this alumni kick where I'm going to show up, I'm going to give him a few words of wisdom. You should have seen the horror on their face when he approached the bench. It was palpable. They're like, "What? Like we're trying to win."
Not again. No.
Well,
when this over.
First of all, Mike was so hungover he couldn't even see across the field. And
was I not standing there in the middle of a public place eating a donut?
I was about to say, and anyone who's seen Mike knows
stereotypical American thing.
Yeah, anyone who's seen Mike knows he's a bigger guy, but he makes it even worse by showing up in all sweatpants, holding a box of donuts and a Gatorade. That my wife gave him as we were leaving my house because she went.
You set me up by giving me that box of donuts because
she's like, "You look like you're in bad shape. Here's donuts and a Gatorade." So we get to the field.
What am I supposed to say? No.
And I just thought, how embarrassing for me and Joey. Anyways, let's go back to the penalty.
I forgot what we were talking about. Okay, so because of your coaching history, you might know the rules of football a little, or as your girls call it, soccer, a little bit better than the average American Jew. So, not that has anything to do with soccer. I don't know why that even came up. Anyway, if the penalty-causing incident is the obstruction of his path to the ball merely by putting his leg out, then it's a penalty. Mm-hmm. If it requires contact in order to be considered a foul and an offense, then it's a fucking dive. Because if Xhaka said our knees touched and they called the penalty, or our knees touched and he fell, that's in reverse order of the way it actually happened. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a dive all day long. And as I was saying on the Gooner Talk, I'm predisposed right now to Zaha's right up there right now. As with the diving cunt league, he can dribble, he can fucking do step overs, and I mean he's like the guy on Raiders of the Lost Ark with juggling all the fucking knives and shit, and then Harrison Ford just takes his gun out and shoots him. That's what we need to do to that guy. Not the gun thing. I don't call me a yank gun lover because I hate him, but the guy's all fanciness. He has got no end product, and he looks to go to ground the earliest possible time that he can. We watched him play up in Everton last Saturday, and it was the same thing. All he's looking to do is earn a penalty. The guy does not seem to want to be a footballer.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And whilst I agree with the people that say Xhaka's leg was out, Tom, I'll go to you next. There was a moment where he's trying to bring it back in, and he's trying to make himself as small as possible. Do you think it's a penalty?
It's really tough. I mean, me and Mike just had a good long chat on the Gooners Talk about it, and I 100% can see why he gave the penalty, because when we were sitting in the stands, we all 100% thought it was definitely a penalty, and it's only since we've seen the video back and seen the Tom Daly style dive that Zaha takes over Xhaka's leg. But the fact is that he does stick his leg out, and yes, you can say he's trying to pull it back, but you shouldn't allow Zaha to be given the option to be able to try and fool the referee, because it was I think was it in the first half, one of their players actually dived and it was waved away by the referee.
Yeah,
and
he was
nothing
about 10, 15 yards away from the play actually happening, and he pulled it up. Yeah.
Was it Zaha again that did it? I don't know if it was Zaha.
I can't remember if it was
I think
or
it was
not.
their left wing.
Even if it wasn't, it was.
Yeah. Let's say it was Zaha. He's got record for this. He's got record for trying to win penalties, and he did that against Everton, of course, which Mike saw as well. And you can't give him the choice and the option to be able to do that. Xhaka did. But I'd say because it's a dive, it's not a penalty, but I can definitely see why it was given. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a good user, as long as we're on the topic, we have a good user question, and we'll go to the formal user questions in a minute. But Carrie McCollum is joining us in the chat box. By the way, this is one of our first podcasts that we're actually doing live on YouTube. We're kind of wading into this slowly at all various times of the day, all different days of the week. So we're happy for anybody that actually takes their time on short notice and comes in. And Carrie, you've obviously been with us since the beginning. Wants to know, and I'll just put this out to all of us so that we can kind of group think this. Who are the top 3 divers, or who are the top 2 after Zaha in the Premier League?
In the Premier League,
currently in the league. Yeah, I was about to say Cristiano Ronaldo when he was at United. He loved to dive then. It's a good question.
Robert Pires.
Yeah.
Oh, Portsmouth.
But there are increasing numbers of people.
Sterling.
Dele Alli
are looking. Well, yeah, Dele Alli might be. Might be.
Yeah, I was gonna say you could probably go Ali first, Zaha second.
All Spurs players.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Finding 3 is tough, but I would say Ali and Zaha.
Isn't it interesting though that we used to say that it's the foreign players who came in?
I was about to say, yeah.
And the dive, and now it's Zaha, Ali.
The top 2 are American.
Yeah. Pulisic dives all the time.
We can always jump back in if we think of another person. What I want to ask you,
we had
boys,
Welbeck against in the Europa League last year.
Yeah, was AC Milan. We did it again.
Yeah.
It was the home leg against Milan.
Oh, well, that was bad.
So we've had some bad luck with our 3 left back being injured this season. You know, Mike, we have depth there. It is bad luck, but do you feel like it might be time to replace Nacho? I know he's a great player, but he is getting old. He is struggling a little bit with more injuries. Or do you think, hey, you know what, when Ainsley's back, when these 2 are good, we're going to have good competition and we're going to be solid there? I mean, what are your thoughts? Because we can't go into Liverpool, United, and Tottenham without an out-and-out left back.
No, and I'm not quite sure what the injury update is on Nacho Monreal. I think he's fine when he's healthy. I don't think he's too old, but if he's not healthy, then I think we need to pick up another left back in January. I think maybe if there's one priority right now, finding somebody that can play that position naturally, even if they're just for depth behind a recovered Kolasinac or a temporarily healthy Nacho, or or Maitland-Niles, just somebody else in depth in that position is needed, because Xhaka can't be our option, not only because of his inexperience in the position, but like you've both said, for what he does to our midfield by not being in it, which many people would be thrilled about, but I'm not. So definitely, if there's one addition to this squad that I think we need in January, and I'm not saying we're great everywhere, I'm just saying if there's one I do in January as opposed to wait until the summer when we start shipping out the people who aren't in Unai's future and shipping in people who are, it would be in the left back position.
Well, the physio room is saying that both Hector and Kolasinac are expected to return November 3rd, and both are struggling with a tight hamstring. I kind of see that Hector Bellerin substitution being, there's probably a niggle there. Again, physio table is saying there's no day to return, but I kind of see it more as let's get him off now because we might need him as right back and then Lichtsteiner next week as a left back or vice versa. But, you look at that run of games, if you can give both Monreal and Kolasinac a extra 7 to 10 days of rest, they go into Liverpool fresh. and then hopefully one of those two can be in that position. And I have no problem if Lichtsteiner needs to start against Liverpool. I think we're going to be fine there. We're just going to need a little bit more cover with speed.
Let me a quick 30-second poll, because first of all, his name is Lichtsteiner. People want to ask.
The amount of people who call him Liechtenstein.
Tom, do we want to kill these people or what?
Mike has this thing of like, if you incorrectly send a text message, if you don't capitalize a word, if you pronounce something wrong, he's the first person to like tell you how bad you are at life.
Look, you can't be adding syllables to people's names.
Like the other day, I was like, hey, let's discuss the Arsenal goal against Leicester, the second one. And I was like on the flight texting. He goes, you mean the third goal, Andrew? The third goal.
Look, dude, I can't be
spending I'm like,
all this extra time fixing your mistakes, okay? I need somebody to fix my mistakes, but I can't be doing other people's mistakes.
Let's go to it.
All right.
Your point.
What, Leicester's second goal?
Dick.
Lichtsteiner, it's been a hot. Again, we mentioned the fabled WhatsApp chat. I don't think Lee Judges would mind me outing him as being a little negative on Lichtsteiner this year. Maybe not so much negative about him in specific, but about our feeling good about him being like the solution right now. And I get where he's coming from, but he'd rather not see a player coach, as he's been described, as a 34-year-old in that spot. I think he was a great signing because I think he has probably a lot to do, not all, but a lot to do with Hector getting better at his position, feeling a little bit of pressure from behind. I think the jobs that he's done have been average, if not better than average. Andy, your view on Lichtsteiner, given that we may be seeing him against Liverpool on Saturday if Bellerin doesn't. I was high on him because we need a Dick in the team. I think he can stop a pace. He can't keep up with a pacey left wing, but he can certainly teach him a lesson early in the game and make him a little less daring.
I mean, I can't believe I'm about to say what I'm going to say. We keep referring back to this WhatsApp group. There's a ton of people in it, and one of the guys is the most negative, just nasty. Well, Tom, you removed yourself from it, but there was something Claude said.
Long-term emotional preservation, right?
Yeah, there was something Claude said to Lee's disregard of him as a player is, you don't play for Juventus that long and have that successful of a career if you're not good enough. And so for me, if he needs to slot in against a Liverpool, a Tottenham, and Man United, I'm okay with it because he's got such a football knowledge and a brain. Where he lacks speed, he'll make up with his tactical awareness and his decision-making. He'll be able to pull players to help him. So I think he's a great person for us to have in the squad. Now, next season, I'd love to see a younger, fitter guy come in to push Bellerin, but I think he's the exact person we need at this moment to help Bellerin be a better player and to fill in when we need it. And you're right, Mike. He is going to be that little pit bull when shit hits the fan. He's going to be the first one over, and against Palace, he made that tackle. And he was the first person when the ref came over to say, I know I did wrong. He went and helped the player up. He apologized. It's just what he has from his tenure in the game.
He knows the dark arts better than most. And
absolutely. And you need that.
We need that. We've needed that for a long, long time. Tom, your opinion on Lichtsteiner.
Lichtsteiner is lick my balls.
He's. I think I completely agree with Andy. Not on his pronunciation, but I agree on his premise on the player. I think that when you were looking at the type of player we needed to bring in, we lost Mathieu Debuchy, who rather annoyingly lost Mathieu Debuchy because he's a player who could have done a job if he was committed and was willing to, but he wanted to get first team football, and fair play to him. We've brought in a guy in Lichtsteiner who's obviously 34 years old. It's going to be his last, this could be his last club. Who knows? He might have the fitness to go on for another season somewhere else, but I can't imagine him getting another year extension at the club. But he provides us with that player who's great in the dressing room. He's a great coach at Bellerin, and Oli turned around and said the other day, he was like, we're paying however much a week for a coach. We're not. We're paying for someone who's excellent cover. As you said, Mike's been at Juventus for however many years. He got more Serie A appearances since his arrival in that league than any other player. And he's an absolutely fantastic both attacking and defensive-minded player. I couldn't believe we got him on a free, because he was easily still at 33 years old, at least 10 to 15 million pounds if you were to buy him. So I think it's an excellent signing, a very astute signing, and it's done all the world of good to provide Bellingham some much needed competitiveness.
Absolutely. Guys, I want to ask you a quick question regarding Liverpool. It's a huge match, you know. Is it panic stations if we lose? I know on Twitter and in social media and all the pundits across the world, Paul Merson will be leading it, that we finally played a team and we've lost. Let's say we go into that match and we play them well, but they nick a win. Are we at panic stations at this point, or are we just saying to ourselves, it's football, you can't win them all? Mike.
No, it shouldn't be panic stations at any point this season. Sorry, that was for panic stations. I mean, it's just, again, it's all about perspective. And I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but like, this is a 55 game season, including Europe and cups and, you know, maybe more. But average it out over the entire season, see where you are, see which players have improved, which ones haven't. To take a look at one game, yeah, if we get spanked by Liverpool and we're made to look foolish and it becomes clear, and the narrative will obviously be, well, those 11 wins were horseshit. They didn't matter because this one win by Liverpool over us shows what Arsenal really is. That'll happen, but it's not going to disrupt the long-term goal here, which is to get your lineups right, get your player personnel chosen right over 3 or 4 transfer windows. So, you know, no, it shouldn't be panic stations. I hope that they take it easy on us. I hope that we take it easy on ourselves by at least putting in an effort in this game, that if we don't win, it will be obvious that we were making strides from last season. Mm-hmm. That's all I asked for. And that's all I asked for this entire season. I didn't ask for 11 wins in a row. I'm happy to have them.
Yeah, I don't think anyone was asking for that, but everyone would take them, you know. And at this point last year, we were 9 points off of City, and we, you know, granted, I don't know what's going to happen in the match in a few hours, but there's only a 4-point difference between us and Liverpool. I would hate to see that jump to 7.
A good draw or a win against Liverpool out of seemingly nowhere would do more positive for the club than a loss against Liverpool should do negative.
I think
that's where you want to be.
And I think the only thing that will hurt the club, I mean, if we lose to Liverpool internally, the manager can sit down with the players and say, you know, I love the way we played. It depends on how the game plays out. I think if we lose to Liverpool, it's the Sky Sports, the Talk Sports, it's all the media that's going to come with it, being like, they've finally played a team that was good and they've lost, you know, and it's the 0-3 against the top 6 or top 4 type of bollocks that we keep hearing about all the time.
Bring it on. Bring that on. I really don't care. That shouldn't hurt us anymore. No. Fuck them.
I think that drawing against Palace is actually the best time to do that, is right before the Liverpool game. Because if you go into a game against Liverpool where you've won 12 on the bounce, and the only 2 games in which you've lost are against Chelsea and Manchester City, you've had 12 games of where you could argue yourself as you've played 12 perfect matches because you've won them all. A perfect game, you could argue, is one which you win. And so you don't identify any of the faults and the flaws in your game if you don't lose or if you don't drop points. And so dropping points against Palace could come as a slight blessing, because you might see Unai Emery realise, oh, that don't quite work. We're getting attacked down that side. We didn't put enough energy in here. This person needs to improve. We need to play with a more natural left back, and hopefully we've got that against Liverpool. And if you were to just win those 12 games on the bounce before facing Liverpool, there's less tweaks and there's possibly more vulnerability, because we might have more things that are wrong with us which haven't shown themselves yet until we play the side that basically exploit them. But Palace exploited a lot of our weaknesses, and hopefully Unai Emery's now got a week in which he can address those. And having Blackpool there, yes, it's a game we got to play, and you could argue it's going to fatigue the players a bit for a big game against Liverpool, but it's also a chance to once again get a win back on the board before Liverpool and address any of those areas and possibly try out some different tactics which you wouldn't have had a chance without that game.
Absolutely. And if you look at Liverpool right now, based off of how they've played in the most recent weeks, mean, they've had some pretty they've had some games where they've been pretty they've been very lackluster. They've been very just weak at the back. And if you're Lacazette and you're Aubameyang, you're licking your lips at playing a team like that. And I think if you look at the two on form, I would love to, no professional pundit, because it's Arsenal, is going to say Arsenal are the better team going into this match. But I think if you look on form, we are. And we've got this little Blackpool hurdle we need to get over, where I'm sure some guys will be rested. But it's going to be an interesting match. And I think it's going to be the first time we get to see this squad with 10 weeks of Unai Emery in it. And Mike, you have been saying this for a long time. The Liverpool match will show us this Arsenal team going forward, And so let's see. It's going to be a fun match to watch.
Yeah, I would love for them to show Paul Merson wrong.
The guy's a twat.
Paul Merson, I
mean, I loved him as a player, but he's clickbait media.
Well, and I bring him up because the Mr. Arsenal podcast in our chat room just brought him up, and I'm sitting right now where I used to stand 30 years ago in the North Bank of Highbury, and I can't remember how many goals I saw that guy pour into that net. He was my second favorite Arsenal player in that day. And to see what's happened to that guy, it's desperate. His comments were, and I didn't even mean to make this a thing. His comments were not completely off target. They were just so unnecessary and desperate to get attention. So, Paul, come on, man.
Well, and it's like, if he says that Friday this week, you're like, okay, I get it. But not 10 days, 14 days before the match even kicks off. Yeah. And it's like, if did Liverpool play midweek? I'm not sure if they're knocked out or not.
No, I think they were knocked out, actually.
Okay. But I was about to say, like, if Liverpool go and
I think they knocked out by Chelsea, actually.
Say Sane and Salah get injured before the match, then it completely, he's just reeking for the clicks and the hits, and Sky Sports say to him, hey, give us a headline. We need a headline that makes people click, and that's what he does.
Yeah, that is what he does. Couple user questions. We got just a couple minutes before we want to try to wrap up right on the hour. First from Steve-O, who we haven't heard from a little while. Greetings, Gooners. Have you streaked across the Garden Square Old Highbury pitch yet? And if not, why not?
Well, I'm not there, Steve-O, so my answer is no.
And my answer is no, but ask me again in an hour.
But now, Mike, what if you held your or your phone and we FaceTimed each other, and I run naked through my backyard while you run through the Highbury courtyard? Is that the same thing?
Yeah, but we need to do it in an hour because I just came and I need to work back up a new.
Why do you bring it down? Tom, every time Tom gets to that moment where he's like, my career in media is going up, we bring him back down on the Gooners podcast.
Yeah, he keeps agreeing to come on. We love him so much. So no, I have not done that yet. A couple other questions. We have from Tom Sevens, who I've spent much of the last 2 weeks with, my buddy Tom from Richmond. Are we confident with the squad's defense, or are we shopping in January? Who can we get? Pavard, Alderweireld. I'll give it to you, Tom, for a quick answer. I mean, the question is always, are we looking for that long-term reinforcement in January, or are we waiting until the summer?
No, I think that if we've got the money, we spend it. And I think that if January's the time that, yes, it's not great to bring players in January because they don't get a pre-season, but they've had 3-4 months of season. So, yeah, I think we do go out. If there's someone available we can get that's willing to leave their club, we go out and we spend 40 to 50 million on a centre-back, 100%.
All right,
if you want to name, there's there's loads, but yeah.
I would rather just spend 25 and get someone from the feeder league.
Not the French league.
You keep saying that, but we all know La Liga is the league I'm talking about. All right. From Gary McCollum, this is our last question for the day. Seeing players develop over the course of the season has been fun. And this is kind of along the same lines. But with the upcoming transfer window, unfortunately, some players have to be expendable for Unai to achieve his long-term vision and short-term goals. So this is more about the outs in January. And we've talked endlessly about Ramsey. Let's not talk about him now. But, Andy, any other players that you think might actually be leaving in January?
I could see, and I don't want to see, but I could see like an El Neni heading out to get more playing time. I think at, 10 other Premier League sides, he probably starts week in and week out, and we could probably get 15 to 20 million for him.
Really?
Welbeck's contract is up in the summer. I would like to see us re-sign him because I think he brings a different dynamic. He's scoring goals under Unai. Yeah, I think he's one of those other players like Bellerin where he's silently flying under the radar and improving as a player. I don't know, Mike. It's a good question. El Nini for me is probably the biggest one. I could see Koscielny, as Tom said earlier, him leaving, and we could probably get some decent money from a French side for him. So those are the two players that are on the bubble with our team that I could see that move off, and we maybe bring someone else in, especially with Guendouzi being that kind of over the El Nini pick. But it's going to be interesting to see. And we've always gone into January with, well, Arsenal aren't going to sign anyone unless we are desperately injured. I think that this group of individuals running this club now do something completely different.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Tom, anybody else besides the people that Andy's mentioned that you think might be on their way out in January?
No, I think he's highlighted them very well. Like critical, wasn't it? Fair, you've done it fairly well.
Andy is consistently average with his takes. Is what
yeah.
I think El Neni is the one that Andy highlighted, which I think it does need to move on. I've backed him against the fella for a long time, and I think that he is being shown now. When he came in, I thought he was a good buy, astute signing. It was part of that stat DNA reason why we bought him, and he did a job. But now, moving on, we are a different class of player that we need to be consistently using and bringing in, and he doesn't fit that anymore. So I think that he does need to be moved on, and we need to bring in someone, because Guendouzi is coming as a 19-year-old and has already superseded him into that squad. So that tells you enough for me to that we should be getting rid of him.
And you said the word fella, which just reminded me. I need to tell you, Andy, the peace has been made with the fella. A handshake occurred, and it's only 24 hours until I screw that all up again. By
he
didn't even know
who you are.
What?
No, he didn't.
I was going to say, does he even know who you are?
He did, because he actually sent a text out later about it. So I was wondering about that. He's like, because he looked like he wanted to get home and see his bird again.
Wait, okay, we'll take this conversation off because I know that you're meeting up with people, but.
All right, so yeah, that's about it for the week. Anything else you guys want to, Tom? What are you doing another show this week? Are you appearing on Talk Sport in the middle of the night tonight?
I am, yeah.
This is a random question. I don't actually have any knowledge of that happening.
No, of course not. I'm on at 2:45 a.m. UK time, so that's going to be an early wake up for me to discuss Thierry Henry's start at Monaco, the Classico, and Borussia Dortmund as well. So a lot to squeeze in 15 minutes.
Tom, text that link out when you're on, because that's reasonable hours for me. I'll be cooking dinner.
Yeah, it's just on the main TalkSport channel at 2:45.
Cool.
2:45, yeah. So tune in, yeah.
Cheers. Well, and thanks for having
me. You've made it when you're appearing at 2:45 in the morning.
I think the last time you were on, it was that dreaded 3:45 spot. So they've moved you up.
You gotta pay your dues, man.
Exactly. You gotta pay.
You can't just be like Andy and I and go straight to the fucking top. I mean,
you can't.
That was a once in a lifetime deal. You gotta pay your dues. All right. Well, it's been lovely to see you. I look forward to seeing you on Saturday. Andy, I'll see you virtually at some point to talk about Blackpool and Liverpool.
Yes, and keep FaceTiming me with all the lads when you've got them.
An away. We'll talk about the away.
Seeing Ola's beautiful face yesterday made my day.
Oh man, seeing these guys, literally, I'm like a kid in a candy store. A little too many hugs yesterday, but that's my fault. So,
did you get the sweet embrace from the teddy bear that is Ken Kenny?
Oh, I didn't let go of it. I was in it all night. I was, yeah. If I say any more about it, it's going to turn into an X-rated show. So
when don't you turn it into an X-rated show?
I have no answer to that. All right, so thanks for joining us. We are again live on YouTube now every once in a while. So when we are, we're happy for anyone that comes in. Please give us a thumbs up. I will say, and this is unusual, and I'm not going to say how many people are in the chat room right now because it isn't exactly that of a mature regular show, but we have more people who have given us thumbs up than are actually watching in the chat right now. So I would say that's a pretty good ratio. I don't know if that's ever been heard.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, and subscribe to the channel so you know when we are on live, and bang the what's up the what's up button, the thumbs up button, and make sure you listen to the Gooner Talk with our lovely guest as host, Tom Canton, and we will see you very soon. I have a good idea of where the stop button is this time as opposed to last time, and that's it. Come on, you Gooners.